Hello, good morning and welcome to Unacademy, a one-stop destination for all the English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to the Hindu news analysis for the date 3rd of July 2024. Now, before I show you the topics that I'll be discussing, a very important announcement. We have already launched the Conquer Mains, a quality enrichment program initiative for all the aspirants who wish to ace the upcoming mains examination. Under that, the first video for Indian economy is already available on the YouTube channel, this very same channel. In addition to that, yesterday, Mukesh Jha sir's geography class also has been uploaded. You can have a watch. Please understand the topics which are covered there. All the topics are really essential for the mains examination. Today, Himabindu ma'am's science and technology class will be there. And tomorrow, history by Abhishek sir. Day after tomorrow, polity by Sarmat sir. And then Saturday, international relations by Chetan sir class will be taken on YouTube channel. After that, we are going to migrate to the platform. Please make a note of this. In addition to this, if any of your friends, relatives are looking to prepare for the next year's civil services examination, then there is an offer that we are running. The 15-month duration course will be provided at a price of 24,999 rupees. It was provided earlier, but the discounted price has been continued based on the request of the students. You want to avail this particular subscription, or let's say the discounted price, use it now. The details of the subscription is given in the description. Please do check out. Now, what are the topics that I'll be discussing today? The 8 topics that I've taken from the Hindu newspaper, International Edition. 1. Hindenburg refutes SEBI's allegations. Digital jurisprudence in India, and an article regarding generative AI. The bad loan problem shifting from industries to individuals. Now, what I'll be doing is, I'll be clubbing 2 important articles. One, in today's newspaper, there is a lot of data which has been provided regarding the NPAs, gross NPAs, net NPAs, etc. based on the report published by Reserve Bank of India. I will club the information in this article with one more article, that is editorial, that appeared in the Hindu newspaper on 12th of June 2024. Many of the students have written a mail to me asking when I'm going to cover this particular, let's say, editorial, because Sarmat sir has announced that in the news analysis. So I'll cover that today. 4th article, government of the Bihar, the state government of Bihar has approached the Supreme Court of India regarding the issue of reservation. There is one more article today, again in the editorial page, mixed signals. Let's go beyond what is given in that article there. 6th article, the 2 polio vaccines. A very big article is provided. Not all the information is relevant. Whatever is required, you will understand. And the 7th article is a rural mobile connectivity. So these are the list of the articles from today's Hindu newspaper, International Edition, that we will be covering now. Now let me start with the first one. Hindenburg refutes SEBI's allegations on its Adani short bet. If you are thinking that the issue of Adani Hindenburg saga, which happened last year, is dead, it is useless now, then be very careful. On 27th June, SEBI has sent a show cause notice to Hindenburg. And those who are wondering, Hindenburg is an American company. It's basically an institution that is involved in research analysis. So last year, in the month of January, that is January 2023, Hindenburg came out with a report. Basically, research analysis regarding certain features associated with Adani group of companies. And it was the same time period when Adani group of companies was basically planning for follow-on public offering, FPO. So all of this is happening in the month of January 2023, please understand. And because of certain observations that were provided and concerns raised in the Hindenburg report, the stock prices of Adani company took a hit. overall the market capitalization of this group of companies fell by more than $150 billion. And after that, SEBI started investigations. The matter was even referred to Supreme Court of India. There was a litigation in Supreme Court. Supreme Court said SEBI is conducting the investigation, let them continue. Now what is the story now? What is the connection to the article that has appeared in Hindu now? Along with the investigations that SEBI is conducting in context of Adani, now SEBI also sent a show cause notice last month on 27th to Hindenburg. And what are the points which have been mentioned by SEBI in this particular show cause notice? Understand this very carefully. Certain concerns, issues have been raised by SEBI regarding the practices of Hindenburg. SEBI alleges that Hindenburg was involved in certain activities which is not actually allowed by such research analyst companies or institutions. Point number one, SEBI says the Hindenburg company is not registered. It is not registered in India, but it has violated the research analyst guidelines which have been announced by SEBI in the year 2014. Please remember this. Research analyst guidelines. SEBI back in the year 2014 has come out with certain guidelines, and it is applicable to all these research analysts who will basically publish data regarding stock market, who will give you recommendations regarding buy or sell in the stock market, who will basically be involved in the preparation of research analysis of these particular companies' performance in the stock market. So large number of participants or stakeholders who are involved in the stock market are supposed to follow the guidelines of the SEBI, Research Analyst Guidelines of 2014. So SEBI one says Hindenburg has violated these guidelines. Second one, which is much more dangerous, SEBI alleges that Hindenburg was hand in glove. Basically, Hindenburg had a tie-up with one more investor, and they have purposely shorted the stocks of Adani company. I'll repeat the statement here. Hindenburg was in hand in glove. That is basically they, along with one more investor, shorted the shares of Adani companies in India to make undue gains. And the modus operandi, that is basically the model that was followed by these, which has been explained by SEBI, is as following. Here is the Hindenburg company. I'll start using acronyms now, basically one letter, Hindenburg company. H. This has a tie-up with an investor in America. And this investor in America opens, let's say, a type of a fund account in Mauritius. A hedge fund account in Mauritius with one more investment company. That is basically a foreign portfolio investment company, FPI, which is registered with the Mauritius authorities. They will set up a fund in Mauritius, and this particular investment will be routed from Mauritius into Indian stock market now, and these funds will be used to short the shares of Adani company. And please understand, some of you will say, sir, what is the problem in this? Everything is being done legally now. What is the problem? The problem is Hindenburg, this is what SEBI says, Hindenburg in the year 2022 itself has prepared a report. It has prepared a report and it has shared this particular report to one of the investors, that is this hedge fund manager, Mr. Kingdon, who is from USA. And because the investor now knew that there will be problems related to the shares of Adani company, the shares will start tanking now, falling in terms of market prices. They have already concocted this particular, let's say, cycle. They have created this particular cycle, and once the Adani company announced FPO on 18th of January, the Hindenburg announced the publication of this particular report in the next week itself. And when this report was published, the market prices of Adani company shares tanked, fell down, and because these investors, that is this Kingdon company, was involved in basically the short selling of these instruments, the SEBI says it has made a huge amount of undue gains. I know this is slightly technical, but this is what SEBI says. It is not allowed. It is right, basically not followed by these kinds of investors in the market. Now this is argument of SEBI. What is the argument of Hindenburg? Hindenburg argues this. In a detailed reply to SEBI, which has been posted online now, Hindenburg says, point number 1, SEBI has tied itself in knots. Why? Hindenburg is not registered in India. And because Hindenburg is not registered, doesn't have any offices, doesn't have any personnel working in India, SEBI does not have any jurisdiction control over Hindenburg. That is the first argument. Second argument, Hindenburg says this is one more attempt of SEBI to protect rich, to protect influential businessmen. They have cited this because please understand, this FPI that I mentioned, which is registered with Mauritius, it is one of the FPIs which is owned by the Kotak Group in India. Kotak Group. And that is the reason Hindenburg says the SEBI has not even mentioned the name of the company completely. They have used simply an acronym so as to protect these influential businessmen again in India. Third argument of Hindenburg is that no doubt we were involved in the short selling, no doubt. But the amount of returns that I made by selling or by shorting these particular shares was somewhere around $5.1 million. $4.1 million. And this particular amount of $4.1 million, it's not even sufficient for me to basically cover all the expenditures that I incurred to conduct research, to conduct investigation, to pay for legal fees, etc. And finally, Hindenburg says, we are very proud of whatever research we have done, whatever publications we have done, and SEBI has not even found a single fault with all the factual information that we have provided in the report. So this is basically the two sides of the newspaper article which is provided here. Now be very careful going forward. The concept of research analyst can come into discussion. The concept of regulatory power of SEBI in the stock market can come into picture. So this is basically in a nutshell what has happened in the last one day regarding, right, let's say the Adani Hindenburg saga. Now regarding the role of SEBI, is it relevant for civil services? If you look at the question that was asked in the year 2022, there was a question regarding the functions of Securities Exchange Board of India itself. Let me solve the question here. Consider the following statements. In India, credit rating agencies are regulated by Reserve Bank of India. Credit rating agencies, my dear, please understand, these are not registered by RBI. These are regulated by SEBI. And that's the reason I said regarding the regulatory function of SEBI, suddenly now a lot of discussion might happen. Please be very careful. Second statement, the rating agency popularly known as ICRA is a public limited company. Yes, that statement is true. Third one is Brickwork Ratings is an Indian credit rating agency. Even that particular statement is true. Now, if you observe these particular statements, some of you will basically say, sir, these kind of statements or this kind of information is not given in the books. You're absolutely right. What UPSC does is they will pick up these kinds of statements from, let's say, current affairs and throw it in the form of questions in the exams. So second and third is true. Right option for the question will be option B. Let me go to the next article, editorial, Digital Jurisprudence in India in AI era, artificial intelligence era. Now, what is the discussion in the article all about? Please understand, let's go point by point. First one is, in recent times, there is a rising importance, adoption, which has been provided for artificial intelligence. And within this also, there is a new type of artificial intelligence, that is generative AI. Generative AI, the adoption of which has started increasing. For example, I'm pretty sure a lot of you have visited certain AI websites wherein you are putting questions, the AI website or this AI chat box is giving you the answer. And in that particular context, what is this generative AI? Even this model of generative AI has become very popular now, wherein you will simply give commands. This is called as a prompt. You will give commands, you will put in or you will key in the prompt, and based on your prompt, certain video, certain audio or certain text, etc. shall be prepared by the artificial intelligence machine. And this has become very famous. Couple of months ago, I'm pretty sure all of you have seen, let's say, a video which has been created by AI machines around the world. So the argument here is, in India we have certain acts. We have Information Technology Act, we have Copyright Act, we have Digital Protection of Privacy Act, etc. Now, how do we regulate the generative AI in the context of all of these particular, let's say, provisions under the Act? In that particular context, the basic argument is, please understand, whether this AI, that is generative AI, now the question is whether this is a creator or it will simply be treated as an intermediary. Whether this is a creator or it will be treated as an intermediary now. What is the difference? Let me give a very simple example. Imagine I'll post something against you on, let's say, Meta. I'll post something against you in Twitter. And now you will take an offense against it. You will simply say, you will file a suit, you will file a case against me. And now you will also file a case against, let's say, Twitter. But please understand, under Information Technology Act, that is specifically section 79, these kinds of websites or these kinds of, let's say, the tools will be considered as intermediaries. And what is the use of being classified as intermediary? And this is important. Why? Supreme Court of India, in Shreya Singhal case, remember this, in Shreya Singhal case in 2015 basically protected these intermediaries under section 79 of Information Technology Act, provided they have basically conducted certain, let's say, functions. They have protected, they have conducted all the checks and balances. Under this particular Shreya Singhal case judgment, Supreme Court of India basically said, if an intermediary is posting all of this, you cannot file a case against the intermediary. Because the intermediary is basically providing a platform. They are simply providing a platform where I am posting the information. If you want to file a case of defamation, you will have to file a case against me and not against the intermediary. So that is the argument. Now the question is, with this concept of generative AI, imagine I'll create a video. I'll create a, let's say, sound bite. I'll create a document wherein you have been targeted, and I will take this and post it in another website. I'll post it somewhere else. Now the question is, how will the courts look at it? How the judiciary will have a look at it? Will they hold the generative AI as a culprit here? Will they hold me as a culprit? So that is a question which is being asked in the article here. So let's go point by point here. Third important point, there is a Copyright Act. In India, we have a Copyright Act, and in newspapers and in the news discussion, very often you will come across the term Copyright Act. I am reminded of a very recent news article where one of the music directors, very well-known music directors, Mr. Ilayaraja, sent a notice to the producers of the upcoming movie Coolie, which is where Mr. Let's say, top actors are acting in that. Again, I'm talking about the southern part of India. Mr. Rajinikanth is acting. He is the hero in that particular movie. Mr. Ilayaraja basically sent a notice citing a teaser which was posted in the YouTube and stated that in this particular teaser, certain sound bites or certain sound has been used on which the copyright is there with Mr. Ilayaraja. And not only this particular case, there are multiple cases. Right? In case of Mr. A.R. Rahman also, there are many music composers or singers who have sent a legal notice regarding infringement, etc. So argument here is very simple. We have a Copyright Act, and this Copyright Act provides protection to certain individuals. Now the question is, how are we going to use this Copyright Act to identify and provide protection if I'm going to use a generative AI machine to create a video? If I use a generative AI machine or generative AI to create a sound bite, to create, let's say, a document, etc., will it basically give the right to me as well as the machine? Will it give the right only to me? In that case, if there is anything, let's say, defamatory, who will be held basically responsible for that? So that is one more issue that has been raised in the article here. Fourth very important point, it has been seen that generative AI has been used by multiple people across the world to create documents. And in recent times, there was a defamation suit filed by one of the radio hosts in USA. The argument there was, there is a document which has been created by ChatGPT, wherein the document which has been created is basically talking about a summation of a case which has been filed against this radio host. And this radio host says, this is fictitious. I have not worked for this company, but the ChatGPT machine or this generative AI has created a summation of a case which has been filed against me that I have embezzled money from the other company where I have not even worked. So this was again one more issue. How do we protect now? Whom do we hold, let's say, responsible for all of these issues, etc.? In that particular context, one of the experts made a very snarky remark, made a nice remark regarding the AIs. The expert basically mentioned that humans have common sense. Machines do not have that. Humans have common sense, but machines do not have it. And the fourth very important point, or let's say fifth very important point in this particular context is, in case of India, under the Act of DP, have a look at this. Under Digital Personal Data Protection Act of 2023, individual can ask for basically right to be forgotten, right to erasure, etc. Sir, what is this argument? Imagine I had a fight with a person, minor issue. There was a fight and somebody recorded it, put it on the YouTube. No doubt I'll become viral, I'll become very famous. All of you in fact will take that video and circulate it amongst yourself and criticize me. But what if that particular issue was very minor, both of us came to agreement, now I want the video to be taken down. I'm simply saying there is, a small incident has been blown out of proportion and I'm being maligned in the internet. So there is a protection that is provided. Multiple instances are there where these aggrieved parties have gone to court and have asked for the right to be forgotten, a right to erasure, which is provided under Digital Personal Data Protection, the Act of 2023. Now the argument is, these machines are fed a lot of data. The machines have learned regarding, let's say, my fight with another person. Now, how do we erase this kind of learning done by the machine? The issue is that even in the future, if somebody is going to ask this machine regarding me, the machine can include even this particular event of fight and provide information regarding me. So how do we ensure that these machines will address all of these particular issues? So these are the concerns which have been raised regarding usage, adoption and usage of generative AI. Now, what is the solution? The way forward is also recommended in the article. The way forward is, one, we need to create a regulatory sandbox. We need to create a regulatory sandbox. What do you mean by regulatory sandbox? Please understand, generally the concept of regulatory sandbox is discussed by Reserve Bank of India. What is the idea of a sandbox here? Sandbox essentially means in a controlled environment, we are going to test something. For example, a technology has to be introduced. We will run a pilot test in a very, very controlled environment. That is called as a regulatory sandbox. So author basically says, let's have a sandbox where the systems can be developed without the developers being worried about repercussions. But over a period of time, understand this, over a period of time, we also need to ensure that the developers of AI, the people who are going to feed the data to AI, etc., they will get all the licenses, they will ensure they will comply with law of the land, etc. So compliance will have to be ensured. And the third point, the way forward is, we need to have a centralized database. We have to have one authority which will control all of these regulations, or the database which is actually used by the AIs to develop certain, let's say, information. So centralized database system with an authority, that is the recommendation given in the article. So these are certain points regarding the editorial of digital jurisprudence in India in the era of AI. Now before I go forward, yesterday I gave you one assignment. I asked you people to read this article which appeared in yesterday's Business Line, and I also gave you a question to practice along with. I went through the comment section of the video. There was only one student who has written the answer, and many of the students have asked me, sir, give me the model answer. What is the model answer for this? I'll quickly take a couple of minutes to explain the model answer regarding this. Listen to me very carefully. Discuss the pros and cons of legally guaranteed MSP. You can start with an introduction. That is, a minimum support price was introduced by Government of India in mid-1960s, that is to be precise 1965, in order to protect the farmers from the volatility of the market prices. This is introduction. In recent times, there has been a demand for having legally guaranteed MSP, which essentially means Government of India should introduce a piece of legislation under which MSP is guaranteed to the farmers. Let's start with the advantages. What are the benefits of legally guaranteed MSP? The benefits of legally guaranteed MSP are, first one, right now Government of India announces MSP, but please understand, there is no guarantee as to what will be the amount that is paid by the government to all the farmers. And when I say there is no guarantee, is there any guarantee next year government will announce MSP? Again, government is saying, no, I will not withdraw. But I am asking a very simple question. Any guarantee next year government will announce MSP? Any guarantee what price will be paid by the government, etc.? There is no guarantee. Why? There is no legal recognition. There is no legal sanctity. That is, there is no law which talks about MSP in India. So argument is simple. The government, if it makes legal MSP, that is MSP is legalized, then more and more farmers will get the benefit of MSP. Point number two, even though the MSP is announced by the government, right now, the focus is on procuring the cereals. Focus is mainly on procuring the cereals, that is rice, wheat. And the reason behind that is, again when I say rice, paddy and wheat. The reason behind that is government must run the public distribution system. Government must have sufficient buffer stocks. In order to protect all of this, government will centralize its procurement around paddy, wheat, certain, let's say, oil seeds, certain, let's say, coarse grains, and a few procurement of pulses. What about other farmers who have cultivated other crops? What about the farmers who have cultivated the crop, but government is not procuring these particular crops, citing certain reason? For example, some time ago, there was a friction between one of the state governments in southern part of India and the central government. And the friction arose because central government said they would not be procuring parboiled rice from the farmers in the state. So if there is a legal MSP, government will have to procure these particular crops. And this will help farmers in earning more incomes, and it will help in doubling the income of the farmers. These are some of the benefits of providing legal recognition to MSP. Having said so, what are the concerns then? What are the problems with this kind of announcement? Point number one, if government will pay MSP to all of these particular crops, can you imagine the amount of expenditure that the Government of India will have to incur? Already you keep on criticizing Government of India. I keep on raising the issue of fiscal deficit, revenue deficit, etc. And if government will start procuring all of these particular crops under legally recognized MSP, the expenditure will overshoot. How much? Various experts say government will end up paying more than 11 lakh crore rupees. More than 11 lakh crore rupees. Just understand the importance of the number. The total budget expenditure is around 40 plus lakh crores. Out of that, if you spend 11 lakh crore rupees to basically purchase food grains, What will you do for other expenditure? Your interest burden itself accounts around 20%. I hope you understand. The interest burden, interest that is paid by the government for borrowings that they have done, itself is more than 20% or around 20%. In addition to that, you want to introduce legal MSP where 11 lakh crore rupees out of 40 plus lakh crore rupees, which is again 25% of the total expenditure. So the fiscal burden will be unimaginable. Second one, if government will start procuring these grains at MSP now, already there is a concern raised by multiple developed countries under WTO that India is violating agreement on agriculture. Now there will be more pressure. They will simply run to WTO dispute settlement body, file a complaint against India that India is again violating agreement on agriculture. Third issue, if government will procure all of these crops, where is the storage facility? Where is the warehousing facility? You tell me. Already we do not have sufficient warehousing capacity in India. Food Corporation of India takes warehouses on rental basis. They do not have sufficient capacity. They go for rental warehousing. Now imagine the burden again financially because of the legally guaranteed MSP. In addition to this, if government will provide legally guaranteed MSP, now other buyers in the market will have to end up paying the legally guaranteed MSP itself, at least that particular price. And that will basically lead to what? Higher market prices. If market prices will be higher, what will happen to the prices that you pay and I pay when we purchase the food grains from the seller in the market? That will also be higher. The reason here is, please understand, right now the market prices are determined based on supply and demand of the food grains. But if government will guarantee MSP whatsoever, guaranteed MSP, then obviously the market has to fall in line, follow the MSP price. And that might actually contribute to the food inflation. So these are some of the concerns which have been raised regarding the concept of legally guaranteed MSP. Now many of you will simply say, great then. If you provide, there is a problem. If you do not provide, there is a problem. What is the solution then? The solution can be, you can write this as a way forward. Rather than providing legally guaranteed MSP, government can extend income support to the farmers. Provide more income support to the farmers. That is one solution. Second solution is, rather than providing legally guaranteed MSP, why doesn't government go for the model where whatever is the market price, if it falls below MSP, government will pay the shortage. Government will pay the deficit amount. That is basically the model of price deficit payment. The deficit payment model. So this can be recommended as a way forward whenever you write the answer to this kind of a question. Done? Now, what is the assignment for today then? Yesterday's assignment I have done on your behalf. What is your assignment today? Look at the question. There is a need to review the targets under the FRBM. And those who are wondering what is FRBM? FRBM basically stands for Fiscal Responsibility Budget Management Act. Fiscal Responsibility Budget Management Act. So there is a need to review the targets under FRBM, as blind adherence to the provisions may hurt the social welfare approach of the government. Elaborate in 250 words. Some of you will ask, sir, how do I approach this question? How do I write this question? I will help you out. I have given you two articles. One article which appeared in Business Line. The title is, Why Should We Pursue a Zero Revenue Deficit Goal? And second article which appeared in Mint newspaper, either repeal or revise the country's fiscal law. Read both of these articles, then try and write a very good answer to this question for 250 words. And those who want a model answer, wait for my next class. Whenever I take up the next session, I will give you the model answer to this. Now let me go to the next article. I'll discuss two articles now. Is the bad loan problem shifting to individuals from industries? Along with this, I'll club one more editorial which appeared on 12th June, India's looming financial crisis. Now what is being discussed in these two articles? Let me explain. Listen to me carefully. Reserve Bank of India has published a report by the name Financial Stability Report, FSR, Financial Stability Report. And in this report, RBI says the NPAs in the banking sector, NPA stands for non-performing asset. NPAs in the banking sector have fallen to a decadal low. It has fallen to a decadal low. That is essentially the NPAs have come down to the lowest level in the last 10 years. Some of you will start becoming happy. Wait, there is a concern. RBI also has at the same point of time raised a concern regarding rising loans to retail borrowers. Rising loans to retail borrowers. Now, what do you understand by the term retail borrower? Whenever individuals will borrow, when you will borrow from the bank, when I borrow from the bank, these are called as retail loans. And for different reasons, we are allowed to take retail loans from the bank. RBI has raised a concern regarding rising retail loans. Now, the same point of discussion is being done even in this article. The argument here is, you provide loans to industries. Industries take loans, invest, that will contribute to capital formation. Is it okay? You give a loan to industry, industry will use it to produce goods by purchasing, let's say, machinery. Capital formation adds to the capital formation. And when this kind of a cycle is initiated, you can observe that the growth in the employment will be higher, more and more jobs will get generated, people will earn more money, GDP of the country will start increasing, and at the end of it, all the outcomes are positive. Although there is a concern, if this pace becomes very, very high, there is a concern regarding inflation. But right now, we should not be worried about inflation. Focus on the argument here. But in case of the Indian economy, in the last 1 decade, what has actually happened? The banks initially, before 2010, used to provide lot of loans to industries. And there was a global financial crisis in the year 2007 and 8. And as a result of the global financial crisis, the impact was felt by Indian economy. Many of the borrowers, corporate borrowers specifically, were not able to repay the loans. And the non-performing assets in the banking sector ballooned. It increased by a large number. In fact, RBI report says that the problem was much more complicated because the banks were not correctly recognizing the quality of the loans. And that is the reason in the year 2015, Reserve Bank of India introduced methodologies to correctly identify what is the quality of the asset. Right? They introduced reforms, not just in 2015, over a period of time in the last couple of years, Government of India along with RBI, they have implemented reforms. And as a result of these particular reforms, at one point of time, when the NPAs in the banking sector were very, very high, in double digits, we have been able to drag them down. NPAs are very low now. Now, some of you will ask me, sir, should we memorize the numbers? Do not memorize the numbers, because from 1 year to next year, NPA numbers will keep on changing. But here is a concern. With these kinds of reforms that were implemented, banking sector changed their practice. Rather than giving more loans to the corporate borrowers, the banking sector, even with NBFCs, fintechs, they started targeting retail borrowers. They started targeting the retail borrowers. And there is a starting point of a looming financial crisis now. Right? This, if it will snowball, it will continue, might become a financial crisis in the future. How so? Here is a retail borrower. The retail borrower takes a loan. And as long as the economy is performing well, as long as the retail borrower earns a certain amount of money, they will continue to repay the loans. But having said so, at the drop of the hat, that is, if there is something wrong in the economy, what these retail borrowers will start doing is, they will start defaulting on their payment. They will start defaulting on their payment. You might be asking, sir, why will they do that? The reason is very simple. I, as an individual, will try to protect myself, reduce my consumption, reduce the outflow of money. I will reduce consuming goods and services. I will default on the repayment of the loans. And when all of this happens, look at the outcomes of it. Understand the outcomes. On one side, I will reduce the consumption of goods and services, which means the demand will go down. That will affect production in the economy. That will snowball into higher unemployment rate. Again, right, it will lead to economic crisis. And on the other side, if I do not repay the loan, whatever loans I've taken, if I do not repay the loan, and please understand, it's not just because of economic crisis that this will be the outcome. The argument is, in the process of giving more and more loans, the experts are saying the banking sector, the NBFCs, etc., they have given loans to a lot of the borrowers who are not supposed to get loans. In simple terms, the quality, credit worthiness of the borrowers has been ignored. And with all of this, if the borrower starts defaulting on the repayment, NPAs in the banking sector will shoot up, and that might lead to financial crisis in the future. So on one side, the demand will go down, production will go down, unemployment will start increasing, and on the other side, it will also lead to higher NPAs, causing crisis in the banking sector. This is what has been argued. Now, how do we measure it? We know that there is a concern. How do we know what is going to happen? How do we basically anticipate it? RBI in the report has mentioned two very important indicators. RBI says focus on two very important indicators. What are the two important indicators? One, slippages. The first one is the slippages. Sir, what do you understand, or what do I understand by the term slippage? Slippage essentially means from 1 year to next year, how much is the addition of NPAs? How much NPAs will get added to the existing NPAs called as a slippage. So how much is the addition of the new NPAs specifically from the retail loans? Keep a watch on it. Because RBI says the slippage is very, very high in case of retail borrowers. Second one is delinquency. The delinquency basically means the borrower behavior. If the borrower starts defaulting, let's say periodically, they are supposed to make a EMI payment now, they will default. After 2 months, again they will default, they will delay, basically. So this kind of a delinquency over a period of time will snowball into the borrower completely stopping the repayment of the loan. So keep a focus on the delinquency as well. If the delinquency start increasing, it is an indicator that in the future, these accounts might become NPAs. So these are some of the concerns which have been raised by RBI as well as the expert regarding the growth of loans in the segment, that is the retail loans in the banking as well as the NBFC segment, which can snowball into a bigger problem over a period of time. Let me go to the next article. Bihar government moves to Supreme Court of India against Patna High Court order quashing 65% quota. Before I start the discussion here, I was reading the articles regarding this. There was one statement that struck me. In the order that was issued by Patna High Court, the judge observes, it is to break the stranglehold of a few at the expense and to the detriment of the many that the reservation to the backward classes was envisaged. But merit cannot be completely effaced and sacrificed at the altar of reparations. This was the principle on which 50% limit was laid on for reservations. Very beautiful statement. But anyways, let's start the discussion here. What is the issue all about? The state government of Bihar launched caste-based survey. They launched a caste-based survey in the year 2022, right? Specifically in the month of June 2022. Now the survey was conducted, the results were made available, and the results were published. Point number 2, the results were published. Results were published in the year 2023, and in the same year, the introduction of bill was done by the state government of Bihar in the state legislature. In the legislature, they introduced a bill, and under this particular bill, they wanted to amend the Reservation Act of 1991 and increase the reservation for backward classes, extremely backward classes, scheduled caste as well as scheduled tribes from 50% to 65%. They propose to increase under this particular bill the reservation from 50% to 65%. Now the moment that was introduced, discussed and passed, there were certain litigations filed in the High Court. And the litigations, that is basically cases, were filed. Their counter argument regarding this proposal of the state government, which was actually accepted by the Patna High Court, and the Patna High Court struck down this amendment and the increase from 50% to 65%. What was the argument? First one, the litigants argued that the state government, by increasing the reservation from 50% to 65%, they are violating the judgment of Supreme Court of India in the year 1992. That is Indira Sahni, very, very famous. Indira Sahni versus Union of India, the judgment of 1992, where the Supreme Court of India basically stated that reservation, unless it is an extreme case, reservation shall be limited to 50%. Reservation shall be limited to 50%, not more than that. Although even this has been questioned again, there is a case which is pending at the Supreme Court of India. But whatever, let's say, attempts have been done by many state governments to increase their reservation above 50%, unless there is certain extreme situation, Supreme Court of India struck them down. So the litigants basically said the state government is violating, or it is basically not following the judgment order. Second argument, you have conducted a caste-based survey, you did not have sufficient discussion. The bill was introduced in a hurried manner, without sufficient discussion, you have simply passed the bill. So sufficient discussion was not conducted. That was the second argument. Sufficient discussion not done. Third argument, you are increasing the reservation from 50% to 65%. Automatically, for all these classes, that is backward classes, most backward classes, the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribes, automatically the reservation proportion has been increased. How can you do that? You will have to study the caste-based survey, find out which of the caste is actually falling behind. Have an economic criteria, because that is very important. Look at the economic criteria. You have ignored all of it. Automatically, you have increased all of them in a proportion from 50% to 65%. That is not acceptable. The fourth argument that was raised by the litigants here was, when you increase the reservation from 50 to 65%, did you consult Backward Classes Commission? Did you actually consult the Backward Classes Commission? You have not consulted. So how can you basically increase the reservation from 50% to 65%? So these were some of the arguments which were put forward. Looking at the argument on both the sides, the Patna High Court ruled in favor of the litigants and basically struck down the hike in the reservation from 50 to 65%, brought it back to 50%. Against this judgment of Patna High Court, now the Bihar government has actually approached the Supreme Court of India. In the coming days, more and more discussion will be conducted regarding this particular issue of hike, or let's say higher reservation. Is it required? If so, on what parameters can you provide? Does this particular caste-based survey, in fact this became one of the election issue as well. One of the political parties representative announced that if we are brought to power, we will conduct a caste-based survey across India. We will give more reservations, etc., etc. So this will be a hot potato now. Lot of discussion will happen. You will have to keep a watch on it. Let me go to the next article, mixed signal. This article basically discusses regarding index of 8 core industries. Listen to me very carefully. The article focuses on the discussion of index of 8 core industries. Last week, the publication of the ICI data for the month of May was done. The ICI data index of 8 core industries for the month of May has increased by around 6%. The article discusses what has happened in cement sector, what has happened in the steel sector, fertilizer sector, etc. Should you memorize this particular data? Not at all needed. But I'm more interested in a larger picture here. What is a larger picture? There is part of the paragraph where they discuss what is the impact of heat waves. What is the impact of heat waves on the economy? I hope you understand. Heat waves you will generally come across as a concept under geography, paper 1. But here is a connection between the heat wave, a geography concept, and the Indian economic concept. What is the impact? If there is a heat wave, what is the impact of that on the overall Indian economy? Suddenly UPSC can ask you these kind of interrelated concept either in geography paper or in the Indian economic paper. Please be very, very careful. Now, what do you understand by the term heat wave? Please understand. According to IMD, heat wave is declared if the temperature rises above 4.5 degrees Celsius compared to whatever should be the average temperature during this particular time of the year. If the temperature is more than 4.5 degrees Celsius and within or less than 6.4 degrees Celsius, because beyond that it will become a severe heat wave. So if the average temperature or if the temperature is more than 4.5 degrees Celsius compared to what should be the temperature in this duration, then that is classified as heat wave. There is one more classification. In the plains, if the temperature goes above 45 degrees Celsius, and in the hilly regions, if the temperature goes above 30 degrees Celsius, even that is taken and declared as a heat wave. So this is the definition of the Indian Meteorological Department, IMD, to declare a heat wave. But come to economic aspect now. If there is a declaration of a heat wave, what is the impact of it? What is the larger picture here? Please understand, if there is a heat wave announcement and if there is indeed a heat wave, what is the outcome? First one is labor efficiency would be affected. Please understand this. Labor efficiency would be affected. For example, according to IMF data, more than 80% of the labor in India works in unorganized sector. Around 46% of the labor works in agriculture sector. Now, when you look at agriculture sector and even informal or unorganized sector, don't you think lot of this population generally works in sunlight? And if there's a heat wave, higher temperatures automatically will reduce their productivity, Even it can have a health impact wherein the number of workers will cite a higher heat wave, as a result of which they will basically fall ill and they will not report to the work later. So one, it will have a huge impact on labor efficiency. Remember this. Second one, higher heat wave, or let's say heat wave, it will also have an impact on agriculture sector. How so? If there is a high temperature, it has been observed that the water levels in the reservoirs will drop. And with lower water levels, automatically agriculture sector production would be lesser. The production of cereals, that is the food grains, will start going down. And not just this, understand this carefully. If agriculture sector is affected, even the fodder production for animals will be lower. With lower fodder production, let's say the milk production would be affected. And with lower milk production, the prices of the milk will start increasing in the market. And on the other side, if labor is not able to work, if agriculture farmers are not able to work, their earnings would be affected. The consumption or the demand for the goods and services in the market would also be affected. So overall, what you can observe is the incomes of the households, the water levels, the agriculture sector production, inflation in agriculture commodities, and that is important. Why? RBI has already stated that food inflation is their main concern. So with all of these, again there might be a resurgence, or let's say rise in the food inflation level. So this is basically the connection between the heat wave and the impact on the economy. So be very careful, two different concepts from two different papers, there is a close linkage. Now let me go to the next article. Two vaccines that brought us to the brink of eradication of polio. Now there are two types of vaccines in case of polio. I've highlighted certain points for a very simple reason. Most of the article discusses historical concept. That is, right, what kind of, let's say, the studies were conducted, what kind of experiments were conducted, whether the viruses were grown in, let's say, guinea pigs or that, or human trials were conducted, etc., etc. As far as I am concerned, UPSC doesn't focus on all of this. UPSC will focus on the concept here. There are two vaccines to eradicate polio. And as such, please understand, as such, eradication of polio is very important because the WHO, World Health Organization, has set up end of 2024, we are in the same year, end of 2024 as a target year for eradicating polio. But in recent times, especially couple of years ago, even after announcing that Africa is polio free, there have been certain instances where children have been attacked by polio virus, where children have contracted polio viruses. And there are certain pockets of regions in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, where even today there are certain instances of polio cases. And that is the reason the article simply says that there is a danger that we might not be able to achieve the target of eradicating polio by 2024. Now, whenever you talk about polio, please understand, there are two vaccines which are discussed in the context of that. One is called as IPV, inactivated polio virus. IPV was basically prepared for the first time by Jonas Salk. It is given in the article, don't worry. And second one is OPV, oral polio vaccine. This was basically developed by one more the scientist. The name of the scientist is Albert Sabin. Okay. So IPV, OPV. What is the basic difference? And that is discussed. IPV and OPV, please understand, many countries have used a combination of both IPV as well as OPV. In case of India, we have also used IPV, we have used OPV. If you have seen the pictures, whenever this polio drive is conducted, you will see the pictures where there is a photo of a child and there are drops being, right, basically put into the mouth of the child, right? 2 drops, do boond, they'll say, do boond zindagi ke. So understand this, polio drops, whenever they are given orally, this is called as OPV. And what is the technology there? We are going to use the viruses, we are going to use live viruses, but activity is watered down. They are very, very less active. They are less active in the context of they will not affect the human, or if the child is given this particular vaccine where virus is there, alive virus, but very, very low activity, they will not attack the human. They will not attack this particular child's system. That is basically the concept of oral polio vaccine. Whereas on the other side, IPV, right, in case of IPV, it's almost dead. That kind of a virus is injected. It is injected into the children, right? So basically 2 types of system. Out of 2 systems or 2 types of vaccines, please remember, OPV is considered to be much more effective. It is considered to be much more effective. But please understand, there have been very, very rare cases, very, very rare instances where by providing OPV, by giving OPV to the child, there have been cases of polio in that particular region. How so? When you basically provide, let's say, OPV, that is you give 2 drops of, let's say, polio vaccination to a child, the child will defecate. And because please understand, through defecation itself, that is through fecal matter, the virus will enter into somebody else, right? That is another child. So there have been certain instances, very, very rare though, where this particular OPV, which is considered to be much effective, very, very effective in terms of eradicating poverty, has actually led to cases of polio attacks, right? And that is a precise reason, because of the miscommunication. But having said so, please understand, experts around the world argue that no doubt there have been certain instances, but between OPV and IPV, OPV is very, very effective. OPV is very, very effective. And another advantage of having OPV is, if you want to vaccinate through injection, you need an expert. That is, the person who will inject has to be an expert. I cannot simply take an injection and inject the IPV into a child. I can't do that. I'm not an expert. So you need trained experts who will administer IPV. Whereas in case of OPV, any health worker, because all you need to do is basically drop 2 drops of this particular vaccine. So that is the reason OPV is considered to be much more effective in the fight against the polio as such. But having said so, why? Why is that despite having vaccination like this or vaccines like this, there are instances. Africa was declared as the polio free back in the year 2020, but now there are certain instances. For example, in 2022, the reasons which have been cited by the experts are people who are not vaccinated are migrating. Or let's say in one region, there is let's say certain children who are not vaccinated. And if that particular child is not vaccinated, polio will spread from one child to another child who are also not vaccinated. So because of these reasons, miscommunications, wrong interpretation, poverty, inaccessibility to the vaccines, etc., there have been certain instances where even today there are cases of polio. Right, so these are the points which are mentioned in the article here. Let me go to the next article on improving rural mobile connectivity. Now before I start, please understand, lot of information is provided in the article. In fact, most of the article talks about this kind of a technology. Right, that is the picture is given here. IEE 2061 network, etc. Is it required for civil services? I do not think so, because this is very technical in nature. Lot of standards are discussed, lot of technological data is provided here. I don't think so to the UPSC will go to the extent of asking questions on this. But what is mentioned in the article which is relevant for UPSC? Point number 1, there is a concept called as tele-density. There is a term used here, tele-density. What do you understand by the term tele-density? Tele-density essentially means in a particular region, what is the number of people who are present here or residing here, and how many telephone connections, how many teleconnections are present in the region. That is basically called as a tele-density. According to the data provided here, the tele-density in case of urban India, urban part of India, is around 1.2. That is, for every person there are 1.2 connections in urban part of India. Some of you will ask, sir, how is that possible? How can you have one person but 1.2 connections? My dear, multiple phones, multiple SIMs, etc., etc. You must be knowing that. In case of rural part of India, the tele-density is 0.58. The tele-density is 0.58, which essentially means what? There is a digital divide. Remember this particular point. There is a digital divide that is existing between urban and rural parts of India. And if there is a digital divide, don't you think the argument of government of India to promote digital economy, to promote, let's say, cashless economy, to promote financial inclusion, or even for that matter, let's say, the promotion of digital tools to use for literacy, etc., etc., all of that would be affected. For example, government of India wants you to be dependent on more of digital money, that is, the cashless economy. Try to conduct transactions online rather than being, let's say, dependent on hard cash, that is physical cash. If you want to achieve that, you will have to address this particular digital gap that is existing between rural as well as urban. Now, question is why? Why is that there is a gap that is existing between rural and urban? Reasons are: 1, lot of the households do not have sufficient incomes to pay for the packages which are provided by the telecom companies. Simple. The incomes of these rural households are very less. And because the incomes are very, very less, they are not able to afford the packages which are provided by the telecom providers. Second one, the telecom providers also focus more on providing better kind of a technology in urban part of India compared to rural part of India. Reason being, they will develop more infrastructure, invest more money, because in case of urban India, there is more potential revenue for them compared to, let's say, rural India, where number of villages are very, very high. The presence of people, that is consumers, is spread across a larger region, where they will have to develop more infrastructure, invest more money, and even then population, most of the population will not be able to afford these kind of services. Because if a telecom service provider will invest and develop infrastructure, automatically they will price the services accordingly. And already I have told you, the rural households do not have sufficient source of income to pay for these kind of services. So these are some of the reasons which have been cited as to why there is a rural-urban digital divide that is existing, which is represented by the tele-density number for both urban and rural. So these are certain important points which are mentioned in the article here. Beyond that, the technological issues, etc., all of that, I don't think so is relevant for civil services. So these are the various articles as well as the concepts related to the articles. I've also given you an assignment. Please do attempt that particular question. So if you like these initiatives, hit the like button. If you're yet to subscribe to the YouTube channel, kindly do it now. Thank you. Have a great day.